With due respect to Senator Lero, who said lion share to the southwest, when will southeast even have lion share in any particular project? Mr. President, if this is an omission, it is an expensive omission. The southeast cannot continually to be treated the way Nigeria is treating the southeast. Let me give you an instance. Out of the dams that were listed here on the southeast, Ivo Dam was last funded about 12 years ago with a 5 billion naira spent on it, and it has been abandoned by Nigeria for the last 12 years. I had written 3 letters to the Ministry of Water Resources. We have done everything possible to see if they can bring up Ivo Dam, and here a zone is allocated 66 billion and the entire south is at 0. What kind of omission is that, Mr. President?
Thank you.
We should be treated better than this, sir.
See, this is a very good issue. That's pointing out something that's going on. Many of us have been crying of marginalization. Many of us have cried on several issues where North is completely was neglected. And I'm sure this may not be the end. I want to draw the attention of the makers of the Renewed Hope agenda. I want them to bear in mind that every part of this country is part of Nigeria. And every part of this country deserves infrastructural development. It is not wise in allocating resources to sometimes over-allocate to one zone at the expense of other zones. Here on this floor, I talk about the way Northeast was completely neglected in terms of road infrastructure, where trillions are being spent on some section of the country. No cover is being spent in the Northeast. We said it. We also raised the issue of agriculture, where money was being allocated to some zones and our zone was not there. So, Mr. President, is for Nigeria and it's for other Nigerians. The makers of this Renewed Hope agenda should be advised to bear in mind the diversity and the necessity to cover every section of this country in allocated resources. It's not only this one. There are so many areas, and that if we want to go through one by one, we'll continue to debate. So I think there's general need for them to review their position and ensure that every part of this country, whether southeast, southwest, south, northeast, we all need development, and we need to be allocated adequately and fairly and equitably in whatever they do. That's my comment. Thank you.
Sometimes when the Igbo people come out to complain about marginalization in Nigeria, you need to listen to them, because it is like every day this thing keeps manifesting. The truth about Igbophobia and marginalization of the Igbo people in Nigeria is that the Nigerian state is not even hiding it anymore. It is clear that they don't like the Igbo people. It is clear that they want to subdue the Igbo people. It is clear that they want to do everything to exterminate the Igbo race out of Nigeria. But no matter how hard they try, they can never succeed in their evil scheme against the Igbo people, because the Igbo people keep waxing stronger. Despite not having access to power at the federal level, the Igbo people still remain strong, and they are thriving in every phase of human endeavor. Even the people that try to shut them down whenever they talk about marginalization can attest to the fact that the Igbo people are being marginalized in Nigeria. The marginalization of the Igbo people cannot be fully understood without referencing to the Nigerian Civil War, which is also known as the Biafran War. The war was preceded by a series of events that led to ethnic tensions. Notably is the January 1966 coup, which was led by junior Igbo military officers, which resulted in the death of prominent non-Igbo political leaders. A lot of persons talk about this coup, but nobody is making reference to the counter coup that was more deadly. And the said coup that was even being termed an Igbo coup was not carried out by Igbo people. But they had to target an Igbo coup because they want to carry out a revenge against the Igbo people, even though that revenge was done, which was the counter coup. And it's not just a counter coup, but an anti-Igbo pogrom in the northern Nigeria, which led to the massacre of thousands of innocent Igbo people and displacement of millions of Igbo people in the north and in the southwest. It was this pogrom and massacre that led to the declaration of the state of Biafra by Lieutenant Colonel Chukwu Emeka Odumegwu Ojukwu. The declaration of the state of Biafra led to a catastrophic civil war which resulted in over 3 million deaths, primarily young Igbo civilians and children. These civilians did not die by the barrel of the gun. They died due to violence, starvation, and diseases that was inflicted upon them by the Nigerian government. After the war, following the surrendering of the Igbo troops, the Nigerian federal government declared the war, no victor, no vanquish. But that was just a rhetoric, because it was undermined by the action of the federal government, such as the Public Officers Provisions Decree number 46 of 1970, which dismissed or forcibly retired Igbo officers who fought for Biafra, and the Banking Obligation, the Eastern State Decree, which limited compensation for Igbo bank account holders to £20 only, regardless of pre-war deposit. The abandonment property policy in Rivers State confiscated Igbo people's properties, dealing an economic blow to returning refugees. These policies entrenched economic and political exclusion, setting the stage for decades of marginalization of the Igbo people. Since the Civil War was fought and done till now, the Igbo people has been experiencing one form of marginalization in Nigeria to the other. One of the most visible manifestations of Igbo marginalization is the lack of federal investment in critical infrastructure in the southeast. Despite the region's economic potential and dense population, it lags behind other geopolitical zones in terms of seaport, airport, and road network. How do you explain that the southeast, despite its proximity to the Atlantic Ocean, lacks a functional seaport, a critical infrastructure for trade and economic development? Trade and commerce are the key vital business that is being carried out in the southeast, but they lack critical infrastructure like a seaport. Isn't it an irony that the southeast that is geographically closer to the sea than Lagos, but yet the federal government has prioritized seaport development in Lagos and Port Harcourt? This neglect stifles the Igbos' entrepreneurial activities, as they must rely on distant ports like Lagos, which incurred high transportation costs and logistical challenges. The absence of the seaport is seen as a deliberate economic sabotage. This is the same economic sabotage they did during the war, when the federal government carried out a deliberate blockade against the Igbo people, which resulted to death of millions of innocent Igbo civilians. The southeast airports, such as the Akpabio International Airport in Enugu, suffer from underdevelopment and limited international connectivity compared to airports in Lagos, Abuja, and Kano, while other regions have seen significant upgrades to their aviation infrastructure. The southeast airport remain underfunded. This has limited the southeast access to global market and tourism. This disparity reinforced the perception that the federal government prioritized other regions over the southeast. Is it to talk about the road network? The road infrastructure in the southeast is notoriously dilapidated. Major highways like the Enugu-Port Harcourt Expressway and the Onitsha-Awka Road is in disrepair. These poor road network conditions has hindered intra-regional connectivity and economic activities. This has discouraged investment and increased the level of poverty in the southeast. The lack of federal government commitment to road rehabilitation contrasts sharply with infrastructural projects in other zones, which is further fueling accusation of deliberate neglect and economic sabotage in the southeast. The Igbos have been systematically excluded from key political appointments and decision-making roles in Nigeria's federal structure. Since the end of the Civil War, no Igbo individual has served as Nigerian president or vice president, despite the Southeast producing notably leaders like Nnamdi Azikiwe, Nigeria's first president, and Alex Ekwueme, a former vice president. The Southeast remained the only geopolitical zone yet to produce a president or vice president since the capital relocation to Abuja in 1991. Under successive administrations, particularly during President Muhammadu Buhari tenure, the Igbos were underrepresented in top-level appointments. For instance, a 2017 report noted over 80% of top government appointments including 90% of positions in the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC) went to Northerners, with the Igbo largely excluded from strategic roles in the military, security, and economic sectors. Ethnic profiling of Igbos, particularly youth, has become a significant issue. The Nigerian treatment of the indigenous people of Biafra and pronouncing them a terrorist group has led to widespread arrests and extrajudicial killings of Igbo youth, often based solely on their ethnicity. Security forces frequently target young Igbo men as suspected IPOB members, leading to arbitrary detentions and massacre during protests. Checkpoints in the southeast are notorious for extortion and violence, with commuters facing harassment and in some cases, extrajudicial killings. All of this marginalization and exclusion come with its own consequences, not just on the Igbo land, but Nigeria as a whole. The lack of federal presence and job opportunities has driven significant Igbo migration to cities like Lagos, Abuja, and abroad, with vibrant Igbo diaspora communities in the UK, US, and Canada. Why this migration reflects Igbo's resilience is also underscores the absence of opportunities in the southeast. Again, the persistent marginalization of the Igbo people has fueled secessionist sentiment. Instead of being one and united, Nigeria is fragmented and disunited. Until Nigeria government come as one and decide to treat the Igbo people fairly, Nigeria will keep developing backwards. Nigeria will keep retrogressing. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.